All right, so hello on the Sidelines fans. I'm your host, Cameron Capobianco, and today is a historic moment on this podcast because for the first time ever, we have a female guest on the show. I am talking about current head coach of the Canada Women's National Team, Beverly Preistman. So Beverly, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to do this interview. I really appreciate it.
No worries.
So the first question I have for you is, what made you want to become a football manager?
Two things really. I think one, I always loved football from a very young age. You know, I was probably one of the only girls in my hometown playing, kicking a ball around all the time. So I loved the game. But then I realized probably in my teenage years that I was never going to play for my home country, England. But I did love teaching as well. I always wanted to be a teacher. I'd been blessed with some great teachers in my early childhood. And so when I got to my teenage years, realized I wasn't going to make it as a player. I had a real passion for learning, for making people better. So you put those two things together, and you know, I absolutely loved it from the moment I tried it, and my whole career and even my university degree was dedicated towards being a world-class football coach.
And I think I read something online saying that at a young age of 12, you played futsal under head coach of the Canada men's national team, John Herdman. Is that correct?
Yes. No, absolutely. Yeah, I did.
So what was that like? Did you learn anything from him? Maybe even though it was like at such a young age, was there anything that he taught you that maybe you kind of use to this day with the girls on the team?
Yeah, well, I think more than anything, he was a great coach, passionate, made me a better player. And so in many ways, his coaching inspired me to be a coach. More than anything, I think, yeah, I was good in a five-a-side court, in a smaller court, but you put me on the big pitch and I'm not the biggest player in the world. So, yeah, I think very quickly I realized that I wasn't going to make it at the highest level, and his positive coaching experience made me want to become a coach.
Absolutely. So you coached the U17 girls for Canada as well as the U20 team. What was that first taste of coaching like for you, coaching the national, U17 teams or in the U20?
Yeah, well, I think, my first World Cup was in Costa Rica, under 17. And in that team was the likes of a Jessie Fleming, who I knew in that moment was very special, unique, scored some great goals against the likes of Germany and things. And for me, it's still one of my favorite memories. You've got the Tokyo gold medal, but that World Cup was really special. I actually think we could have gone all the way. We didn't, but I knew that I had a really special group. And I think when you're earlier in your career, you don't know what you don't know. And so I got to enjoy it probably a lot more than when you do know more and all the stresses that come with tournament experiences. I absolutely loved that first window, and really from that point knew at the highest level I want to coach, and I want to be a senior head coach eventually.
So I want to get back to the girls in just a bit. It's girls like Julia Grosso, Jordan Heidema, and like you said, Jessie Fleming. But I want to go also to the fact that you went overseas back home to coach England's U17 national team alongside I believe his name's Phil Neville, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. What was the move going at first over for you? I know you were returning back home, but was it like a tough move for you at first to go back home and coach?
No, absolutely. So I actually worked with the Lionesses that recently won the Euros. And so in Canada, I was doing a lot of the youth teams, back-to-back camps, doing a lot of age groups and the senior team as an assistant. But I knew if I took this England job, my sole focus was going to be a senior coach, and I knew I wanted to be that long-term as a head coach. So I went back, worked with Phil Neville, who, for those that don't know, played under Sir Alex Ferguson, Champions Leagues, Manchester United. So he came from a very different experience to what myself and John, who I'd worked for before. So I knew I had to do that to make me a better coach, to really just put myself out my comfort zone, work with some top players. And for me, that was a really brave move because I was very comfortable in Canada. My career would set out here, but I think I knew I wanted to work in the senior game and to go away and get better. Loved being back in England, I must say, because I hadn't been there for a long time. And that really set me up nicely. I learned so much in that short space of time. But when this Canada job came up, it really equipped me to be a senior head coach.
Absolutely. Were there any differences between coaching in England and then you have a team in Canada? Were there any differences in the game?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the main differences is in Canada, your teams spread across American League and then a European League, and they're different seasons. So you're managing players in and out of season a lot. In England, 99% of them are based in Europe, in England, maybe in France. So they're on your doorstep. So what you do is a little bit different. You're at games week in, week out, and it's probably more live football that you're tuning into. I think the second thing, very technical, but I would say the athleticism in Canada, and I knew that was an X factor coming back, is massively there. The work rate, the mindset, the togetherness of the group. But I absolutely, really enjoyed working with the players that were there, and like I say, very technical group.
Absolutely. So when you came back first to Canada, becoming the head coach of the women's national team, you have a lot of girls now on that team that you've seen before, as Jessie Fleming, Julia Grosso, Jordan Heidema as well. Lots of names on that Canada national team. Did you find that the transition, though, at first for you coming back was going to be a difficult one, going from an assistant coach to now being the head coach of the national team?
Yeah, I think because I'd gone and worked with the likes of a Lucy Bronze, who'd won, accolades, we just missed out on the final of the World Cup by losing to the US. I think you go away, you get them experiences, you learn, but also I'm seen in a different light than just an assistant or a youth team coach. So it was the best thing I did to go away and come back. I think had I gone from being the under-17 head coach to the senior coach, I think that's more of an uphill battle because they haven't seen you in that light. So for me personally, it just felt like, you talk about the glove fitting. It really did feel like that because I knew the players well, but at the same time, I'd gone away and made myself better. And now I was in a position where you have to make big calls, you have to be brave, your neck's on the line every week. And so they've probably seen a different side to me as a coach. But in many ways, I was set up for success with only 9 months to an Olympic Games because I knew the players, the country, the landscape, the culture so well.
Absolutely. So I actually have a photo here that I got from the All-State Soccer Show in Toronto of women's national team gold. And my next question ties into that. Before you guys stepped onto the pitch against Sweden for that gold medal game, what was like said in the locker room? Were there any nerves or anything? And like, how'd you guys get settled in to get set to go on the pitch?
To be honest, it's a little bit surreal. And I know you hear people say this, but for those that don't know, we beat the US first time in 20 years. We'd never won game 5, which was what that game, we always sort of lost that game, gone into bronze medal matches. And so for many players, that game felt like their final because they've beat the US, the biggest rival they've been trying to do for many years. You then add COVID, and so you've got no fans in the stands. And so in many ways, one, our goal was to change the colour of the medal. We'd done that by beating the US. And so when I walked into that sort of stadium, it just felt very airy, very, oh, we're in a gold medal match, but it didn't have that same, I don't know what the word would be. I think when you've got a stadium full of 50,000 fans, you feel that a lot more. It just felt calm. It felt, of course there was nerves, but in many ways, I don't want to say this because I didn't say it at the time, you have nothing to lose because you've already achieved much more than you've ever achieved before, and your goal of changing the color of the medal. So it was a nice feeling. It was warm. It was together.
So what was it like then when you guys scored that final penalty kick and you guys were crowned gold medalists of the women's soccer for the Olympics?
Well, what I would say for then those that watched it the first half, I thought this is going to be a long game. I think the energy that the US game took out was very apparent. But then I went in at halftime, made 2 very bold subs. One of them was Julia Grosso. And I remember when I put her on, it felt like we'd come full circle. I said to her, listen, Julia, you're going to go on and win us this gold medal. I'm telling you. And I didn't know, but albeit, we go extra time and you've got all them nerves. She was the one who put the ball in the back of the net. And it felt really fitting for me because, I'd had Julia from the very get-go. She had to really battle to even make that squad and to get minutes really. And she'd come a long way in that period of time. And it was a really special moment for her. The team loved Julia. She's got that bubbly energy amongst the group. And when she put that ball in the back of the net, you almost just can't believe it. It's euphoric. It's like, can't believe we've done it. You're looking in Christine Sinclair's eyes, who's been trying to do it all of her career. Yeah, it was a really special moment. But what I would say, it was just surreal, because normally you'd be with your family, your friends in the stands, and you've got people on FaceTime with a medal around the neck crying to their family back home. So it's probably something that will never be experienced again. And it probably still hasn't sunk in because of a lot of those factors.
So this will actually tie in kind of nice because you mentioned Julia Grosso in that sub and how she scored that final penalty kick as well. For somebody like her, what's it like for you, who's coached her since the U17 level, seeing her grow her game, going overseas to play in Italy for the Juventus women's side?
Yeah, no, it's really, it's proud moments. I think myself and Julie have had some really high moments, some really low. You know, we had some, I remember getting beat heavily by Japan, me not playing her a minute in my first camp against in the She Believes Cup. She had to really earn that. So we've been through some really highs, some really lows. But what I would say, even in the summer, she goes and gets the most goals scored at the CONCACAF Championship. She's really growing, and she's had to really grow some resilience and perseverance throughout her career. But it's paying off. You know, she seems to be really coming to the best moments of her career. And I think when you've been with someone from that young all the way through, to see that, it makes you immensely proud.
So going back to that gold medal, tying into this next year's upcoming FIFA Women's World Cup, what do you think has to be done in order to possibly see Canada maybe go far as well in the Women's World Cup?
Yeah, well, when we got back from the Olympics, we did a whole project on why is Canada always do well at Olympics and not at World Cups. You know, I think quarterfinal, other than back in, I want to say 2003, maybe we did. But in terms of like recent success, and the difference is it's a totally different tournament. It's twice the duration, level of opponents. You can go from playing a top 3 team in the world to the top 30th team in the world. So the rhythm of the tournament changes. You get a lot more days between. And so what we have done is probably prepared the same way for a World Cup as we have in the Olympics, when actually it's a very different beast. So we're doing things differently. We're playing different levels of opposition, targeting more European teams, because this has got more European teams than it's ever had before. But in many ways, building on the success of the Olympics, and you know, we know that what got us gold then isn't going to get us a World Cup in a year's time. So we're doing things differently, but at the same time we have to evolve. I think now teams take Canada more seriously. We've seen that. We've played a lot more back fives and teams who've, you know, sat in a lower block than we've ever played. And that's credit to the players for doing what they did. So we're doing everything we can. We're playing good opposition. And now we're really pushing. Now we need to do more than we've ever done, because I've used the analogy of the mountain. It's the highest mountain you can climb in the world in many ways. And so we have to push, and we have to keep pushing to go and get that, to go and get the win.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does it mean to you? I just want to touch on this because we've seen now an increase in North America in the game of soccer or football, how much it's grown now. What does it mean to you to see how much the game has grown in North America?
Yeah, I think, you know, people talk about Europe and how far ahead Europe's getting the investment, the size of the leagues. But, you know, I think I read somewhere the cost now of an NWSL franchise, you know, it's really bloomed. I think there's been heavier investment, more high profile investment. And players from North America are also playing in Europe a lot more. So you add those two things together and the game is immensely pushing forward. You've got Olympic champions, World Cup champions are all from this part of the world. So, you know, it can't be underestimated. And I think it's only going to go further. I think we've got more players now than we've ever had playing in Champions Leagues, competing with some of the best players in the world for spots in their club teams. So it's only going to get bigger and better. We've just got to now make sure we put a professional league in this country to be able to compete with the rest of the world.
Absolutely. And you see now with that gold medal, what John Herman did with the men's national team, making them qualify for this year's World Cup in how many years it was, since 86, the last time they qualified. What does it mean to you to be a part of that growth?
Yeah, listen, I feel, you know, I've lived in Canada. I'm trying to work it out now, maybe 10 years of my life now. So I'm part Canadian. I've got a Canadian son. Yeah, I feel very privileged to be in a position that I am when you go and win a gold medal or you're part of an organization that's on the pitch doing very well, both on the men's and women's side. And I think that's the hard work that's been invested, not in 1 year, in 9 months since I've been here. It's been, I think, 2012, 2013, that whole development plan to produce the likes of a Julia, a Jessie. It all started then, and we've got to keep investing in both the youth and the senior team to make sure that sustained success for 10, 20, 30, 40 years to come, to really put Canada on the map, both in the men's and the women's program.
Absolutely. And my last question for you, Bev, before I let you go, is what are some pieces of advice you can give to younger kids, younger adults who want to follow in your footsteps and maybe become a coach, or maybe who want to play under you?
Yeah, I think, like, you've got to know what your strengths and weaknesses are and really sharpen them, because I think for a lot of people, you try and be everything to everyone. I think earlier in my career, I did that. And now I think I understand who I am, what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And when you know that, in hard times, when the pressure comes, whether that be as a player or as a coach, if you know exactly who you are and what you're about, that's what you draw upon. And a bit like a team, really, you compensate in areas around you. So I have a fantastic staff around me that compensate in the areas that maybe I'm not so good at. And that's the same on a football pitch. When I pick a midfield, I try and get a balance of different things to compensate for people's strengths and weaknesses. So I would just say being really clear who you are, what you're about, and drawing on your strengths. And of course, trying to fill the cracks in your weaknesses, but knowing exactly who you are, because I think that's really, really important.
Absolutely. Well, Beverly, I want to say thank you so much for joining me on this episode of On the Sidelines and being the first female guest on this podcast. Really appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Beverly Preistman, everybody, Canada Women's National Team head coach. I'm Cameron Capobianco, and we'll catch you guys next time.